tired with not getting a lot of sleep, and it hit me one morning. I remember getting up and just going, this question popped in my head, and luckily for me, it scared the crap out of me. And I was like, what does Jacko's life look like without a dad?
I'm Ange.
And I'm Beck, and we are
Gold Diggers.
It's not what you're thinking.
And we dig the gold out of everyday life stories.
Like today's guest.
G'day, I'm Sam Parker. I accidentally founded a charity called Grab Life by the Balls. My goal is to leave the world in a better place, in particular for my son, Jackson.
Honey, you're my sugar.
So now we're going to go straight to the new segment. And Sam, do you have a question for us today?
I do. What was the last thing you got in trouble for?
Oh.
I don't get in trouble that often. Come on, I'm a good girl, really.
Well, I kind of got in trouble, but not really, because the other night we were having dinner at some friend's house, and I was really tired after working for 9 hours standing. And then after dinner, I could barely stay awake. And in the middle of someone else's sentence, I said, I need to go to bed.
All right.
The words just came out of my mouth.
Right in the middle of their sentence.
Yes. And I'm like, that was so, in my mind, I'm like, that was so rude. But then later, my daughter said, Mum, that was so funny. Why did you do that?
Which kind of lines up nicely
Yes.
with what I would have got in trouble for, except only in trouble with myself because no one else complained about this.
Yeah.
But this does seem to be quite a trait that happens to me. I go to someone's house at night. We have a dinner or whatever. I sit on the couch. Within 5 minutes, I'm asleep.
Yeah.
Right in their mid-sentence. I mean, at least you had the decency to say, I've got to go to bed. I don't even bother with that part. I just fall straight asleep.
Well, there you go. We're twinning. But the hard thing is when you're trying to stay awake and you can't, and everything in your body is working to make you go to sleep, but also working to make you stay awake because it's sociably correct to do that at that time. But you know your body's way past it and you should be asleep.
But then the awkward thing is when they start kind of quietly creeping around you and you're in their house and they're moving cups and they're doing the washing up and they're doing it all quietly, and then you suddenly wake up and you think, what just happened?
I was so disappointed with myself though, because I'm thinking I've been able to do this before and stay awake and stay alert and look interested even when I feel like I should be asleep. But this time the words just came out. I have to go to bed. And we weren't at our house.
And on that note, we now have to go to today's podcast.
Honey, you're my sugar.
Welcome to the show, Sam. It's great to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Great to be here.
And I look forward to hearing your story because I don't know a lot about you, but I've heard snippets just before we began and it sounds very interesting.
Yeah, well, we came in and producer Dave seems to know. He was like, Sam. So obviously you guys have got a bit of history. And he's told me to talk about what is written on your shirt right now, which is grab life by the balls.
It's very subtle, isn't it?
We're getting right in there, aren't we?
This is like not over-branded shirt. I had that on before, but I thought I'd dress up for you ladies, so I've got my polo shirt on. But yeah, it's
Thanks
a conversation starter.
Yeah, grab life by the balls. I think I'll be taking most of this podcast because I can't imagine Beck. She's far too good-natured.
That's what we didn't talk about before. It's so funny when you ring up like insurance or you ring up all these official people, and then depending on who you get, or like even newsreaders, they kind of stumble over it, or we get, when I'm talking to someone on the phone, it's like, your organisation. They never, like some of them do, but then other people don't go, your organisation? Yes, grab life by the balls. That's it, yes.
You almost feel like you have to censor it, but you don't.
Well, that's kind of I think that's kind of the edge that we came up with the name. To engage men, essentially. And it was like, we're trying like pull your socks up and all these sort of other things as our organisation sort of started and was in its infancy. But like pull your socks up comes from being on the Western Front and ducking when you're getting shot overhead. And I was like, okay, that's, if we're inspiring and we'd like to inspire and empower some positive change in the men's health and wellbeing space, it's not a really inspiring message. But I think grab life by the balls, nothing to do with testicular cancer, more about mateship and as a metaphor to live life. Like, come on, grab it. at some point, no matter how far under you are and how much you're weighed down by whatever's going on in your life, at some point you have to grab it yourself. You have to take action, and that was kind of what it's about. And the simple message about taking action for men to improve health and well-being is overwhelming evidence far and above diet and exercise as having 3 close mates.
Yeah, wow.
So if we can, there's plenty of things that need focusing on, that we need to talk about, but the majority of the focus is on the issues. What are we looking at when we come to solutions?
Sam, did something happen in your life that made you go
Where
on
do you
this
want to
path?
start?
Yeah.
It built up. I'm a chiropractor. I'm a trained chiropractor. So we're a bit weird chiropractors. We seem to look at glass half full type things. We have a bit more of an Eastern philosophy rather than a Western medicine approach to health and well-being. So you're looking at how much better you can become, optimizing your health, thriving, increasing your health and well-being. And that was beautifully, I was going to say indoctrinated, that's a bit harsh. That was beautifully taught to me and shown to me by a bunch of great, amazing chiropractors, in particular a guy on the Sunshine Coast here, Mark Postles. And that philosophy is, I wanted to epitomise Mark in many ways for a while there, but I found that I've taken the philosophy of what I learnt through chiropractic and everything else and have transposed that into the men's health and wellbeing space. Yeah. I went through a bunch of personal development once I got out of chiropractic college, and I got evangelical about it and wanted to talk about it and pass it on and educate people, because I could see where it'd be so beneficial, where it could be so beneficial in my life, but then also work on some of my shortcomings in dreaming of playing cricket for Australia or in life, and more generally speaking, and wanted to talk about it. Women were so engaged. So you're like, oh yeah, we'd love to learn more about what you've learned, and that's great. And then I found, maybe not the best equipped, I'm a blokey bloke. I grew up in country New South Wales. I like to think I'm blokey, but I can relate to anyone. Yeah. Somehow, I don't know, that's probably a bit of dad and upbringing and probably growing up in the country as well. But I was like, well, what about men? Why aren't we engaging men? What can we do about it? And then that led on a bit of a journey of investigating the stats. And then when you start looking at men's health stats in Australia, I think it's for families and I can't swear. So they're pretty bad. Yeah. Like, let's just blanket it as heartbreaking, un-Australian.
Yeah.
We need to do something more about it. Like, not getting any better.
Yeah. Why are men feeling this way? Why are they being led to extremes?
So wasn't engaging men with all the stuff I was spewing out. Had a look at the stats and I was like, well, maybe we need to talk about this a bit more. And then saw a bunch of other blokes doing stuff in the space and seeing all these different things and still wanting to get into the nitty-gritty of solving problems and helping people and supporting people and really getting into it. Yeah. And then just seeing the other groups and the other guys that were running stuff around me, I was like, maybe there's something a bit more blokey and Aussie and that we can sort of implement here. And then by chance, I was throwing all this up in the air, and one night the Burger Bar, which used to be in the Bar there on Brisbane Road, it's right next to the Columbian Coffee Co. It was a great place. We spent a lot of time there, spent a lot of money there.
And a lot of burgers.
Had a lot of burgers. And it became like a meeting place of our extended group of friends.
Yeah.
And I remember this one Friday night, I'd finished practice and I was like, Timmy, let's go for a burger. And went on down for a burger. They were really good burgers. Devastated they closed down. That's a whole nother episode, I'm sure.
Bit of grief there.
Yeah. And Timmy and I were there, and then at least half a dozen of our extended group of friends were there as well. Yeah. And so we all sat together. We all just chewed the fat. We all caught up. And so I'd moved from Melbourne after a bit of the backstory. I moved up from Melbourne after graduating, and I'd stopped playing cricket as well. So I was like, where do I find mates? Yeah. And male mates. So I had plenty of females and female friends and that sort of thing. As a chiropractor and the cafes we'd spend in and with my ex, now my ex, we just found all these women to hang out with. But I was like, where's the boys at? Yeah. And I didn't want to play cricket again.
I'd like to hear about your cricket. That sounds like it was a big part.
It was massive. Yeah, that was kind of the driving force in a lot of things through my life. There was I think that's where I get a bit of my tenacity and my
so you were
will
aiming
to win
for
and
the
stuff.
Australian
It wasn't quite good enough. It turns out even maybe if you're in the top 1% of cricketers, you still need to be in the 0.01% to make a bit more of a crust out of it.
Yeah.
But I had great memories and lots of little things that have actually, if you look back and we go all the way back to that, there's little things that I was doing or that we implemented or things that we put in place that have actually kind of subconsciously have led to what we do with Grab Life by the Balls with our social events to connect blokes. So anyway, this burger night, I was like, this is awesome. And then the Colombian, I mentioned the Colombian because the Colombian used to be a whiskey bar on a Friday night.
Yeah.
And not that I drank whiskey back then, I did after this. And then we all sort of just floated on in there, and I was just like, this is awesome. This is so good. Okay. So I was like, right, that's the thing. Next month, 4 weeks' time, we're going to start Bros, Burgers and Brews. We're going to catch up for a burger, and then we're going to go next door for a drink. So you catch up with your bros, you have a burger, and then you go have a brew. And I was like, let's do that. And at the time, I was like, is this going to be like a loosely connected networking group? Is there a bit of do we need a bit of structure around it? I think the first one might have even had the theme of gratitude or something like that, which is not very blokey when you start thinking about it. Or looking at doing retreats and all those sorts of things, you have your stepping process with your business model, you have your free thing and then you have all those sorts of things. Yeah. And that was kind of where Bros, Burgers and Brews was sort of looking at it. Or some
all
coaching
with the
on the
purpose
side.
to bring guys together.
Well, or with the purpose to improve men and change men and make some change to those stats.
Yeah.
And it's been a constant evolution. Then we started growing and expanding. Somewhere amongst that, a bunch of things happened. So the name wasn't working, so we changed the name to Grab Life by the Balls to epitomise action-orientated, solution-orientated change for the individual, but also as for men or males in general.
Yeah.
As part of building a better world, a better community. I had probably a big aha moment. Jackson, my son, was born, did all these great things, really built up my ego around being a great dad. And it floored me about 18 months in. Jacko hated sleeping. I don't know where he gets his stubbornness from. Maybe both Catherine and I, who knows. But definitely a little bit of, I can see a lot of myself in there. And was doing the chiropractic thing, was trying to be a great dad, juggling all these things. And then this little voice in my head, I think the highlight reel of social media and everything that we see, and everyone's living a great life. And I was like, okay, well, and I'm not into material stuff really. It's not really a goal of mine to buy this or do that. It's never really floated my boat. But all of a sudden I was like, where's the house? Where's the white picket fence? Where's my Toyota Land Cruiser? Where's my Bali holiday? It's what's this?
Mode and,
and I was like, that's really interesting. I've never felt like I needed that but I felt this real emptiness, but also this loneliness and this failure as a man in society.
And you attribute that to the social media that you're
I think there's definitely that's where you get most of the comparison from.
Or is it the expectation that you as
I think there's
provider?
I think that's amplified by social media.
Yeah.
There's an expectation, and me was living through an ego of that needs to be, this looks like this, and this is what it needs to be. And that wore away at me, tired with not getting a lot of sleep, and it hit me one morning. I remember getting up and just going, this question popped in my head, and luckily for me, it scared the crap out of me. And I was like, what does Jacko's life look like without a dad?
Yeah, wow.
It's a tough one.
And luckily for me, that spurred me into grabbing my own balls, I suppose. I've never termed it like that.
Not literally.
But let's go with that. Not
Don't
literally.
think of that
Let's
in a
take.
picture.
Okay. Well, I'd like to think I'm not one to sit around and have a pity party. I've always been okay. Well, what's the solution? What can I do? So I implemented my own strategies and developed a bit of a plan in my head and moved forward.
Yeah.
The beauty
Good
of
on
that
you.
experience was then I could see through the facade of strong Aussie men,
Yeah.
or I could really recognise if a guy was not saying something.
Yeah.
Because the
You've
stats
been there.
the stats are there. I know the stats,
Yeah.
and I was like, I can see it. Even sitting down with a mate of mine a few years, only like a year or two ago, at the coffee shop, and I hadn't seen him for a while, and I was like, it was on Are You OK Day.
Yeah.
I was preparing to do a talk on the day, and a mate sat down, and I was like, give it to me, mate. I know. And it was the same situation, young child, same sort of thing. I was like, mate,
Actually,
let me know.
sleep deprivations are really
Well, it just
bad
increases
thing
that stress
too,
state,
isn't it?
and then when you're stressed, you go very internal, you get very focused, and it's usually, that the posture that goes with it, heading down, and it
And
just
you
sort of
saw that
amplifies
in
and
him.
builds. And
Yeah, amazing.
well, I could just see something was up, and then and just that knowing that I completely understand. I know exactly where you're at. It's okay. What do you need? And you could say, but by the time we finished the conversation, not that I fixed anything, not that I was trying to solve anything, I was just trying to be a mate and listen and acknowledge, like, hey, I feel you. I literally feel you. I know exactly where you're at.
He connected.
He was fine after
Yeah.
that. Like, it's just a release valve. Could see the weight leave his shoulders, and he's
You
he's
mentioned
been great.
earlier about having 3 mates.
Yeah.
So is there research behind
Yeah, there
that
is.
number?
Yeah. That's a long story too. So that was one part, and then more recently, the other thing that's sort of driven my resolve for men's health and improving it. Being absolutely flawed and separated,
Yeah.
and I didn't see that coming. I never dreamed about going down that path, but and then a whole,
So you'd already started Grab by the Balls, by the balls, but
Yep.
at that point.
Yeah, it gets
so you'd
convoluted,
already
doesn't it?
had like a network, you were building a network of guys.
Yeah.
And then the separation happened.
Well, the separations were like a couple of years ago. So we'd been doing stuff for almost 8 years. So 2016, we sort of when Bros, Burgers and Brews came to be November. And then about 18 months later was some challenges with, being a dad and my identity there. And then a couple of years ago, coming up a couple of years,
And
separating.
she'd been helping you through
the
amazing.
Brews
And
yeah,
everything,
absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So you didn't
lots
see
of
it coming.
No, it was like it was my actions. I made the call and put those wheels in motion, and I was scared. I was a little boy. I never thought that way. You don't plan for those sorts of things, and just a real.
And it was suddenly, it was no kind of. It took you
Yeah,
by
it was
surprise.
there was just like, I don't know what it was, but it was just like, oh, wow. And then once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it and see
Did
a
that
way.
change your perspective as a father again?
I think that again knocked
Yeah.
my perception of myself as a father and how I portrayed myself, probably particularly on social media. I'm still, as my girlfriend says, I'm still a bit grumpy and can be quite judgmental, but I think I have a lot more, I can't say I'm non-judgmental. I think I'm much more accepting and understanding of not just blokes, but everyone's challenges through life. And
how easy did you find it to talk about that? Because you know,
this
obviously for
is
men's mental
probably
health,
this is my first proper interview sort of since it's all happened about even talking about that. So I've probably hidden myself away for 12 months. Well, we've been doing lots, but again, the mask I've put up in front of it is a big Crab Life by the Balls logo.
Yeah.
So there's I think I'm done with lived experience or experience in men's health and wellbeing. I'd like to get on with it and continue making some positive change. But it
how
happens to everyone.
Were other guys, you having other guys around you?
Well, not
and you
just
helping through
guys as well. I think
Yeah.
it's a community. Like I
That?
think
That's a great point. Yeah.
we need to do some stuff within our communities to help make them just like what they used to be. If you like to, like where's that connection? Where's that Australian identity?
Yeah.
What can we do to unify a nation? And our calling card. I don't know what our Aussies have as our calling card these days.
Yeah.
But if we can connect people. If we can have,
Because it was mateship, wasn't
Mates.
it?
it
How
was
good
mateship.
mates,
That's
yeah.
the thing. Like on one, love how we've evolved and what we're doing and how we can talk about mateship. And I love how blokey and Aussie it is.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, it's absolutely stupid that we're an organisation promoting awareness and encouraging mateship.
Yeah. It's
It's
not
kind
happening
of sad.
organically.
But where's the where are we unified within community? How often do you, not many of us these days know who our neighbours are or connect with them or have a beer? Like Dad used to have beers over the fence with Johnny Buller, who had the shearing shed next door to the farm that we grew up on. Like, we'd go down the road. And
It's a definition of mateship, though, isn't it? Because there's one thing having a beer and watching the footy together, but then there's another thing of actually having a decent conversation that's talking about your emotions and stuff you're going through.
Well, yes and no. Some of the best stories we've had through our social events that we run up and down the Sunshine Coast and a bunch of other locations now. I think there's steps before the conversation, and I think there's a lot more indirect around belonging and community and connection and that rapport that are the missing part of, well, men's health, male suicide, we just need to talk more. I think that's only actually a fraction of it. Not disputing any of the other work that's out there, not disputing that that's untrue, but there's a lot more to it that needs to be blokey. We need to engage men. We need to bring them to the conversation. We need to bring us to the conversation. It's totally confusing out there as to if my best mate is giving me an interview whether I'm allowed to kiss her. Like, well, now how do you meet people? Do you shake hands with them? Am I meant to hug them? I know this person. I don't know. There's all these things where men are being left out of the conversation, and it's not that and I understand,
like political correctness.
Well, and how far does it go? So, what do I say? It's probably going to offend someone.
Yeah.
What do I do? It's probably going to offend someone. I don't know what to do. Yeah. So I'm just going to go out in the shed and bury my head in the sand, and
it's
let's say it's just safe. It's a safer place out there.
I like what you say, because there is a lot of research about communication for men and opening up and being in a safe space where they can share. And a lot of the mental health services will talk about that. But then there is a lead up to that, isn't there? How do you actually, as you say, get men to that conversation? Because there's so many hurdles for them to overcome. So if you're creating that social space where they can just connect, have a beer, be a mate with each other, that's then the next stage, isn't it?
Yeah, or the pre-stage to that. One of our greatest, Brycey's the poster boy for what we do. Brycey is a local concreter. He's an absolute legend. He's a big, tall guy, lovely guy. He's that guy, wherever you are, you're drawn to his magnetism, his humour, his presence. He's just one of those guys. He came down to our Friday Mooloolaba catch-up. He came down 3 or 4 weeks in a row. We hit it off instantly because we had some mutual friends, and he's just that kind of guy. I was like, this guy's great for this group that we've got here. This is awesome. Really love having him around. And then he disappeared. It got warmer months. He had to start work early. So even though our brekkies started like 6 o'clock in the morning, he was still working. Yeah. And then, so this was around sort of August, September.
Do you think the economy has affected the way men gather?
Well, there's a bunch of that. And then Brycey jumps on New Year's Day, so like 3 or 4 months after he'd started coming down. And he's like, guys, just want to say 2019 was terrible. He had got diagnosed with cancer. His wife was really struggling. She had some sort of blood disease, and it was touch and go with her, and all of this stuff. And then still trying to keep the bills and the finances, running a business and all this sort of stuff. It was all weighing on him. But he said coming down and just hanging out was the thing. Yeah. How many times have I got to crop that? Is the thing
we
that
have this effect on people.
Is the thing that it was the thing he said in this beautiful video that he posted live on Facebook on our page. That was the thing that turned his life around.
Yeah.
It wasn't. Yeah, there is a time and a place for a conversation, but it takes time to build that trust. It takes time to build that rapport. Yeah. Movember did some research. It's probably a little bit old, but it's probably still on point. 75% of men think it's great for their mental health to open up and to talk about things. 40% of men have tried doing it and won't do it again because they got burnt or not finding the right person. Yeah. So there's a challenge with that. And I'm just going to throw a cat amongst the pigeons here as well. If it's just men that need to talk, and the suicide stats and the death rates from suicide are massively, 7 of the 9 suicides every day in Australia are men, which is huge. and the common thing is, well, men need to talk more, men don't do this, men don't do that. Interestingly enough, if you have a look at the self-harm stats and the suicide attempts from females, it actually matches about the same as suicide attempts for men.
Yeah.
So just throwing that out there. And then that probably links back to how can we all come together as a community. There's lots of financial challenges. There's lots of busyness. There's lots of stuff happening. We're bombarded with so much information now that we've never been exposed to on our phones and everything else. There's I think we need to, in some way, shape or form, calm the farm and try and use it to our advantage. But
Get back to basics.
there's big issues there. So I feel like that's more than the conversation, and it's more about mateship. So coming back to, this was a journey trying to find this information. 3 or more close mates. So we had an event in Newcastle back in like 2016 or 2017, and an amazing guy, Professor John McDonald from the University of Western Sydney, one of the founding fathers, led to understand of the men's shed movement in Australia, which is huge and which is like a gold standard for men's health and wellbeing in the world. And he threw this term out: if you have 3 or more close mates, you're less likely to have all these things. I'm like, that's awesome. That's amazing. Like, where did he get that from? And I was like, well, he's a professor, so at least if I quote him at this talk, like going back to my uni days and referencing, I was like, well, Professor John McDonald said, so he must know. And then spent I've spent like 3 or 4 years and having heard that, but then trying to find the reference. I got in contact with the Australian Men's Health Forum, the University of Western Sydney and all these places, and no one could I was like, no, what you've sent me doesn't actually say that. I accidentally found it looking for the financial impact of mental health and male suicide in Australia, and found this amazing white paper. I've quadruple backed it up so I don't lose it. And it actually had the right reference, the correct reference. So if you have less than 3 close confidence, so hence I use mates, you are more likely to have mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and suicidality. Interestingly enough, if you have less than 3 close confidence, you're more likely to have a heart attack, you're more likely to have a stroke, and all these sorts of things. So if you have 3 or more close mates, it decreases your risk by double of suicide.
Yeah, wow.
Less likely to have, you're protecting yourself basically against anxiety and depression. But also all the other things that knock guys off, decrease heart attacks, strokes, all the big killers. The only one that apparently there's no research for, I've been told, is prostate cancer. But if you have 3 or more close mates and you get diagnosed with prostate cancer, your chances of recovering from surgery quicker are astronomical, and you live longer.
Amazing.
So if there's one thing, there's a whole bunch of stuff, like when it comes to men's health, like across the board, male and female, 1 in 2 of us are at least once in our lifetime having a diagnosed mental health condition or disorder. 70% of men are overweight or obese, and that has its own issues. What are the other ones? 9 in 10 workplace deaths are men. 1 in 4 Aussie men have no close mates outside their immediate family. 1 in 3 Aussie males report being lonely. And if you're lonely or socially isolated, it's as bad for your health as being obese or smoking 16 cigarettes a day. So maybe not the workplace death stat, but all those other stats we can influence and turn our focus on. Well, the stronger the social connection, the more likely we're going to rise above what those stats say. But then on the other side of that, where the chiropractic philosophy comes in, like looking forward and looking towards creating a better community, creating a healthier community, is if you look at any longevity study or any positive psychology study around happiness or living a longer life, guess what? One of the 5 things that they always find: social connection.
For sure.
Something
so why
so
have we
simple.
not, I haven't heard that until now.
You're welcome.
Thank you. But it makes complete sense. Like, it seems so practical as well. Like, to actually avoid mental health issues, focus on building 3 friendships, which is something practically we can all do.
I'm glad you see it like that, because that's what I try to say.
Yeah, but then why are we not hearing about this? Because it's such a good solution.
It's funny because when our kids were little, Tony always said, make sure you got 3 friends, because especially for the girls, if you had 2 friends, sometimes they could go off together and talk about the girl left behind. But if you had 3, you have more of a chance of having an even friendship.
Yeah.
So,
When I've been in groups of 3 with friends and stuff, it's never really worked. That's true. Yeah, it's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
That's
so
fine.
I don't know why we're not hearing this, or is this something that you as grab your life by the balls you're promoting?
Yeah, I think there's it's a bit harder to make money out of something like that.
Yeah,
That's why we're not hearing about it. Like if it was in a pill,
yeah, that's
blow
true.
me down, it will be.
Yeah.
Sorry, I almost swore there. Blow me down, it would be front and centre.
Because
Things
Sam,
go
I
wrong.
look at you and you seem to be very outgoing and you can easily talk to people and you've got charisma and, you're friendly. But I worry about the men who are introverted and shy and have low self-esteem. And how do they feel comfortable going to a group, something like yours? How do they break out of their safe little space and connect with another man? Like, how are they getting that mateship when they don't feel good enough to step out and have a voice or feel accepted?
Yeah, it's super challenging. Like, there's a lot out there for crisis. There's a lot out there for support. And the other thing, part of the pie that we sort of hang our hat on is prevention. But you're still waiting for someone to ask someone whether or not they're okay. So you're still waiting for things to happen. And that's super challenging.
Yeah.
Part of my passion is I got sick of hearing about the guy that had all of his life together, that had everything, and he's no longer with us.
Right.
It's like, well, we need to be implementing something needs to change. And if we actually look at the stats around male suicide, a lot of it is a life crisis issue. The main cause, I think it was 98% of the final cause for that to happen was a life crisis issue. But so there's that underlying part. A life crisis isn't a diagnosed mental health condition or disorder. Financial pressures, relationship issues,
They can't keep
all of
that
that's the facade, our
Yeah.
ego of like that expectation or whatever it is that we're hanging our hat on.
Yeah.
And so we're looking in the wrong place. We need something positive and proactive. We
Yes.
need something that's simple and effective, and we need something that engages blokes.
Yeah.
And that has been what we've tried to. Every time we've thrown stuff up against the wall to see if it works, that is basically what Grab Life. They're kind of the 3 parts we're trying to hit. Keep it something that is beneficial but is also proactive, but will help if you are struggling, to engage blokes, but to also make some positive change that's easy. 3 close mates. And yet it is hard. And so that's what I noticed is that our social groups that we run every week in different locations on the Sunshine Coast, Caloundra, Peregian, Mooloolaba, we're in Gympie, we're in Rockhampton, we're in Warrnambool, Gold Coast, South Brisbane, Perth, as it grows and expands.
That's great.
We're everywhere.
Yeah.
But the general demographic that has time is an older demographic,
Yeah.
and which is great. And some great stories from the guys that come down, or the wives of the guys that come down. They're like, hey, this is so good. No,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he knows, but he's so much happier. This has been really good for him.
Yeah.
But the 25 to 40, suicide's the leading cause of death for men under 55 in Australia. But they're also the busiest.
Yes.
Forging a career, doing all the expectational things and
Yeah.
having a crack at all these sorts of things. Having a couple of kids, probably, most likely, all these other life things. They
The
may not have time to come down to our event.
So you've obviously been through some crisis yourself. You talked about your separation, and you know all of this stuff.
Yeah.
What was that like for you then when you went through that? Did you find it easy to connect? Did you have 3 guys that were your close friends?
I think if I look back, I had more than 3.
Yeah.
Oh, I had more than 3 reach out, but it was one, I wasn't ready,
Yeah.
and 2, I was a bit more discerning of who. So
You'll
that was
protect
really
you.
that was really interesting experience. And at the time, I felt safer with a couple of women to be able to express that and to get that out. so not necessarily male friends.
What do you
But-
think it was about the women that made you feel like you?
I just felt a bit safer, to be honest. There was other people and there was other men in my, I would say that are my three closest mates. But that was also
like us and we're interrogating you.
maybe. Well, I think there was probably a safeness there. I think there was maybe a better level of understanding I felt with what I was going through, when something big happens to yourself, what I've started to see is that when something big happens in your life, that might create a whole absolute storm in a teacup in someone else's life. So it's not that they don't want to help. It's not that they don't want to ask. It's not that they're not thinking of you. It just rocks their world. Thinking about stepping away from a relationship, for example, that shatters their version of themselves as well. And it's
I think
not
that's
that
a really key point now, because I think we can often think that men's mental health is a men's issue for men to deal with, to create men's groups where they can talk, but there is a part for females to play for certain. And I
massively.
think that in times of crisis, I think females generally are a bit more nurturing. They're probably a little bit more empathetic by nature.
It's funny you say that, because I was just thinking of the relationship of a son with a mother, and often a son will come and just have a chat with a mum as they're growing up in the kitchen or something. And I wonder if that converts to when you're older, say your age, and do you find a mother figure sometimes?
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a part of that. But yeah, I just found that there was too much cognitive dissonance of what I was going through that would bring up too much stuff in their life. I think, looking back, and I was having a chat with an amazing lady yesterday, and her husband suicided 12 months ago or thereabouts, from what I could gather, and her friendship group completely changed. There's only a few people that she's still in contact with, and I was like, well, my experience going through what I've gone through is that it's not necessarily you. People don't have any idea how to relate to that or to understand it or to be there for you. It's just too much for them. It's nothing against you. They probably really care and they probably want to really do something, but there's just too much going on for the. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And so it's just easier to just put a lid on it and go on with life. And so I think that was part of where I had the female connection through that. But then I've got, and a couple of other guys were going through their stuff, but I do have one solid guy who's my mate, my mentor, and we had he called me on some stuff and challenged me, and I was like, oh, man, I really feel alone now. Like, I just need some, give me a break, mate, kind of thing. But he's the guy. I'm like, yep, I've got that one there. And it was like super interesting. I did try a couple of times. I was like, oh, okay, I don't feel like this is right, but are we going to have a conversation here? I'm going to share something. But then it never worked. Like, I didn't even get to share in one instance. So it was like, okay, you're talking about something else. I don't think you're the right person. So I think it's about being discerning of who year 3 is and the time and place.
So what is the process? What you do now? Is it still like the grab a drink, get a burger, or is it?
We're engaging men wherever they're at.
So you meet, you create social events?
Yeah, so most of our stuff is in the mornings. There's coffee catch-ups on the Sunshine Coast and around the place. Other places like the Perth guys that have just started, that came through, they found us for a fundraiser. They fundraised for us in memory of one of their players, Jordan. And they do their sausage sizzle after training on a Thursday night. So you can go down to the Curtin University Rugby Club and have a snag and a chinwag.
Food is great. Whenever I want my kids over, I just make a big curry and they're there.
Yeah, and the burger nights, anything to engage men is great. We're heading down to the Grange Social Bowls Club. They've been running an event called Local Dads Drinks. They get together on the last Friday of the month, and just creating that connection. There's a bunch of stuff for dad. There's like smoked meats. There's beers. It's a Friday night. It's this eclectic, old school kind of warm bowls pub that has this great vibe. There was no one there where we met Josh the other day, but I was like, oh, this just reminds me of growing up in the country, I think. And I was like, oh yeah, it seemed like a great community. It's about that community and that connection. And if that's over a couple of beers, like, I think Guinness actually did some research and saying catching out with your mate for 2 pints is actually beneficial to your health and well-being, but obviously not very robust study, and obviously they're looking for a certain answer. But like, it doesn't
be Guinness.
and that's part of going back to like, well, how do we get the guys that aren't
Yes.
going to come down? Like, it's weird coming to, I don't know any of these guys. There's 30 guys at Mooloolaba having coffee, or there's 15 guys having coffee at Clown. It's like, this is weird.
Yeah.
You can see people like look at us like, what's going on over there? This is weird. What are those blokes doing? That's where the talks. That's what the hard part has been. Well, how do you package that up and provide that as an educational presentation or something like that?
Yeah.
And it's just empowering, knowing that social connection is important.
Yeah.
You don't have to come to any of our events, but hopefully you're thinking about who your 3 mates are.
Yeah.
And if you haven't got 3, 2's pretty good, 1's great.
Yeah.
But maybe where can you find the other ones?
Yeah.
And then also getting together with your mates is, whether it is a couple of beers, whether it is going for a surf or lawn bowls or golf or 4-wheel driving, like, it doesn't matter what it is.
Yeah.
It's doing it.
Because that's the thing, isn't it? We've lived busy lives. A lot of people, they work all day, come home exhausted, probably don't think they have time for social events. But actually to prioritise those things. It's not a waste of time, or it's not a thing to do if I've got spare time. It actually is important to prioritise those times.
Yeah, and I think that permission, being like we talked about on the political correctness and all that sort of stuff, it's really challenging. I found it really challenging to prioritise that myself. If you think of an avatar, if you like, of it's... what's the most popular name? Matt, Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We'll go with Matt. Matt works like he's in the middle of his career. He's trying to forge his career or go up a couple of steps. He's probably whatever, blue collar, white collar, it doesn't matter. There's potential he's working 40 to 50, 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
He's got 2 kids and he's married. The kids are starting to get sport stuff. So you work 60 hours a week. You come home on Friday, you're absolutely knackered. And then Saturday you get up. You've got kids' sport, you're running all over the place, wake up a little bit tired and a bit hungover on Sunday, and then you go to Bunnings and do stuff around the house, and then you go back to work on Monday.
Yeah.
Like, where do you find time?
Yeah.
And that's why we try to make our events nice and regular and weekly.
Because ultimately we're here to look after each other, aren't we? And
Yeah.
if, as a community, men and women come together to support men's groups and women's groups, whatever. We're heartbroken that there is a percentage of the population that's going to suicide when it's not needed. There are remedies. There are things that can be done, like what you're doing, which makes what you're doing so fantastic.
There's a whole bunch of guys that come to our events during the week, but the stats aren't changing. And there needs to be something fun, iconically Australian. Like, what can we do? What's massive? What's a ridiculous idea? And I was like, oh, what if we did like this big barbecue? And then I looked at world records for barbecuing and barbecues, and there's like weird ones. Like, you know what, Guinness, there's all these sorts of how long the barbecue is, how big the barbecue is. Paraguay and Uruguay have a competition about who can cook the most meat. Like, that's ridiculous, insane. But the world's biggest barbecue, all in one place, all at the same time, people-wise, is held by Mexico.
Wow.
44,252 people.
What the
And
heck?
it's like, and I'm pretty sure the last time I checked, we might have to check this, but Australia has no world records for barbecue.
What?
Yeah, exactly. How un-Australian is that?
That's our thing.
And
Put a shrimp on the barbie. I mean, we
That's
own the
right.
and as a
Great
general
Aussie
blanket
barbie.
term, like, how un-Australian are the men's health stats?
Oh, yeah.
So what? And iconically, like,
So
besides
is
the
this your
pub,
quest now?
yeah, besides the pub, pretty much. This is our version of our Are You OK Day, or a big morning tea. Funny enough, where there's similarities with the model we've chosen.
So is
And
this
it's like actually
something you're
doing it.
trying to achieve to break the record?
So Father's Day is like the only day when it comes to men's health or men in general that's not it's not about getting your prostate checked. It's not about suicide prevention. It's more of there's like basically the only day where we celebrate being a man to some degree. International Women's Day is fantastic. It's all about inspiring and empowering women, and look what we've done, and it's amazing. International Men's Day, if you know when it is, you probably don't.
No, never hear about
November
it.
19th. And most people don't. It's all about the aforementioned stuff. Well, it's like, well, what's a fun day? Well, it's Father's Day. It's probably the only day. So rather than being a heavy, deep conversation, why don't we have why don't we have some fun? Why don't we celebrate? Why can't we create a bit of a buzz about something with men's health? Well, it's like, well, Father's Day is the day.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do we do a barbecue? Well, it's like, well, we're only small relatively. Like, well, how do we put on this? Like, that's going to, cost, and chicken and the egg, all those sorts of things. It's going to cost this much. Could do this, back and forth.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, someone's already doing it. Why don't we host barbecues? Why don't we get people to register? So this year, it's finally come out. My mate John took me through his change enablement process, and the thing that I needed to be focusing on was grab life by the barbecue due to other trademark grey areas. Can't say Aussie Big Barbecue or Biggest Sausage Sizzle or whatever it is. So we just we have the grab life stuff. So let's just go with that. Grab life by the barbecue. From this year forward, from Father's Day, which is Sunday the 1st of September this year, until Sunday the 8th, register and host a barbecue. Obviously create some buzz around raising some funds for a men's health charity that's actually proactive, that's action orientated, that's part of the solution to these issues.
Yeah.
But the beauty of it, and it didn't drop in until later, was that we're actually putting our balls where our mouth is. We're like, sorry for that visual, everyone. I've done so well not to swear this whole time. So
great,
As long as they don't end up on the barbecue, we're all right.
But we're encouraging people to hold a barbecue. We're encouraging people to fundraise so we can do more of what we're doing. But we're also getting everyone together.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh my God. I was like a light bulb. I was like, you idiot. Like, yeah, we're practicing what we preach. We're encouraging people to get together. We're encouraging mateship. We're encouraging this social connection. We're all looking at this social connection, and it's iconically Australian. Like, it's un-Australian that we don't have a world record. We need to do something. We need to grab it by the balls in so many ways that are going to engage. And again, it's that mixed match of doing something really purposeful that can create some change, but then it's also come on, Australia, come on, mate, why can't you? Yeah. So we've got a
November
bunch of
20th, there'll be a meat shortage.
I'm not going to touch that one. So we've got a bunch of stuff happening on the Sunshine Coast. Some great people. We're having these great conversations.
And how can someone sign up to be part of the barbecue?
So head to grabalifebythebbq.com.
Yep.
And click on host, I think, or register. And so that'll take you to our fundraising page. Set up your fundraiser. So then if you're a business in particular, you can show how much you raised. And there's a bunch of other things that I need you to do to then track how much you help us raise, but then also track the numbers as well. So grab life by the barbecue.
It's about getting everyone together.
So we'll be at the station. There's a bunch of stuff happening at the station, the night quarter on the Sunshine Coast to help launch it, which is fantastic.
That's great.
Lauren and Chris and Chrissy done amazing stuff there, and my mate Sammy Coward is front and centre with Grab Life by the Dodgeballs on Friday the August 30th, and then the Father's Day extravaganza, big market and everything going off at the station, and then our good mates, Your Mates Brewing. I always have to say brewing at the end because everyone gets confused, so I'm talking about Your Mates. Your Mates Brewing have also jumped on board, so we're going to have like the after party on Sunday the 8th. So hopefully celebrating, look, who knows? We've partnered with Dads in Distress. They used to do snags for dads. They're a national organisation helping men going through divorce and separation and some of the darkest stuff. Yeah. So going back to the suicide stats, most of the suicide stats come from that demographic. They've been doing snags for dads. They've dropped that. They're doing Grab Dads by the barbecue in conjunction with us as well. So there's going to be a national reach with this. Awesome. Who knows how close we get to the 44,252 people.
But you got to start somewhere.
Yes.
Got to start somewhere, and there's no reason in 5 or 10 years' time we're not talking about 1 million or 2 million people getting together for a barbecue, because it is so iconically Australian, and I think we're all starving for that connection. We all, male and female, all of us.
So how can someone come to a Grab Life by the Balls event?
It's really simple. Just rock on down. I know it is really weird and hard the first time. grablifebytheballs.com.au. Click on the events tab. All the events are there. There's lots of events happening. I'm trying to get the website a bit more efficient, or the Facebook page, or we're on Meetup as well. Just come down and say g'day. Just come and introduce yourself. There'll be a guy, which is, we're over-branded with our T-shirts. It's pretty easy to spot someone. And great guys, though. Anyone, even if they're not the volunteer that's running the event, you're in the right place.
Right.
Amazing.
Time for gold.
It's been so great having you on the show today. And what gold have you got for us?
Someone once said to me, the best ideas are solving your own problems. And I think you've done that. You've obviously recognised in yourself your need to support your mental health, and it's taken you on this journey of researching, okay, what is out there, and coming up with this great idea, something very simple really, that's evolved into what it is now. But I can tell that you're so passionate about it, that you care deeply for it, because it's something you know you need and have benefited from in your life as well. And so that's given you this great drive and motivation to solve a national problem and to change the face of mental health for men in Australia. I think that is an incredible goal to have, and is so needed in this country. And I think you're filling a space that many people are looking kind of into the emotional connection, being able to converse and talk, but there's like this gap that you're filling, and I think it's very clever and smart what you've done, but it's come through your emotional connection to it. So I think you're going to go from strength to strength with that.
Yeah. And I love your honesty. Like, I love that you're so honest with yourself, that I love that you shared tears on the show with us today. Like, that really touched my heart. And I know that's going to connect with so many people, because we can't do life by ourselves, and none of us can, and we need each other. And to have someone like you come on and share your heart with us, but also be such a charismatic, motivated person with such a big heart. You're getting me too. To want to help your fellow man. And I can't believe I'm crying now. But I love the love that you have for your fellow man and women and us as a community and as a country. And I agree, we need to get back to mateship. We need to be back to Aussie basics, how we used to be. And I think what you're doing is just fantastic, and really grateful that you're doing this.
Yeah, it's going to save a lot of lives.
Yeah, thank you.
Where's our box of tissues?
This is twice we've needed them today.
Awesome.
Oh, so good.
Thank you for being with us today and sharing your story.
Honoured, thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Gold Diggers podcast.
If you want to be a guest or you want to reach out, you can do so on our website, thegolddiggers.com.au.
We also share behind the scenes footage and giveaways across our socials on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube and Facebook.
We dig for gold every Wednesday, so subscribe and follow now so that you don't miss a story that could change your life.
Honey, you're my sugar.